where people get it wrong is they think they can eat brain foods and it will be all they need to do. So what really you have to do is combine that with eliminating the foods that don't feed your brain and actually harm your brain. And those are ultra-processed foods, things that are very high in sugar, things that are very high in chemicals, for example. Once you eliminate the ultra-processed food...
Yeah, the sugars too.
Exactly, right.
You can feed your brain one of two ways, either through food or supplements, right?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
that could work. If you're not getting the turmeric, you might supplement with curcumin. If you're not getting the broccoli, you might supplement with sulforaphane. If you're not getting the red meat, there are amino acids. And then nootropics are substances that are science-based that have been shown to enhance focus, memory, mood, mental energy.
Like caffeine's a nootropic.
Right.
Jim, such a pleasure to finally have you on the show.
Yeah.
This has been a long time coming.
Congratulations on the show.
Thank you.
So great to be here, and thank you everyone who's tuning in.
Yeah, no, this is great. I think one of the things that inspired me to do this show was coming on your show. And it was such a fun experience, fun conversation, and we got to, really connect since then. And I think I sent you a picture of my son reading Limitless, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's 11 and he loves the book. And,
Thank you.
So, I think it's written for everybody, but even kids can gain so much from this book. And I had him read it because of the chapters on digital detoxification, basically, as you say. But we'll talk about that later.
Yeah. I'm feeling good. I just came from Next Health, had a NAD trip, which is another, I know we're talking about brain optimization and learning. NAD is so very powerful.
It's super powerful, yeah. And so glad that you're optimized.
Yeah.
I wish I had a little bit of NAD before this too. But Jim, before we get started, I'd love for my audience, I'm sure almost everyone knows who you are, but just for the people that don't, what do you consider yourself an expert at?
Two areas. Really, my inspiration was my desperation. I had a very slow brain from a traumatic brain injury, so I like to help people have their best brain possible.
Yeah.
So we do a lot of brain optimization, the hardware, but we also teach people the software. I think one of the most important activities or functions of the brain is learning, and I think also it really serves us today, in today's day and age. Our ability to learn rapidly and translate that learning into action is the ultimate competitive advantage. When you can learn how to focus, remember, read faster, understand, think more clearly, you could apply that towards everything.
Yeah.
Medicine, marketing, management, Mandarin, music, everything gets easier in your life.
Yeah.
So accelerated learning would be the other area. So Limitless is about upgrading your brain and the hardware, and then the software on how to learn faster. A whole area of science called meta learning, which is really the science and art of learning how to learn. It's interesting. School teaches you what to learn: math, history, science, Spanish, but there are no classes on how to learn. There's no class on focus or flow or remembering, right? And I just feel like the content always changes. The half-life of information gets shorter because everything gets outdated and AI, and there's so much information and data clutter. And this information anxiety creates, health issues, higher blood pressure and compression of leisure time, more sleeplessness. So we help people with mental overload, distraction, forgetfulness, and so much more.
Yeah. Oh, wow. And, I think there's always a spectrum there, right? I think like you started off, I think you mentioned that they called you the guy with the broken brain or the kid with the broken brain in school, right? And you were suffering from not being able to use all of your mental faculties. And I want to talk about your history too. And that's one big aspect of the patients that I see in my clinic, the people that are suffering. Then the flip side of that coin are the people that want to optimize and really use his brain to the full potential. Yeah. So why don't we start with, if you're suffering right now with brain fog, talk about your story first, actually. Yeah, if you don't mind.
Yeah, the Kwik of it, and Kwik really is my last name. I didn't change it to teach accelerated learning. It's my father's name, my grandfather's name. With a name like Kwik, you could say my life was pretty much planned out. I had to be a runner back in school, which is a lot of pressure when it says Kwik right on your
Right.
shirt. I have to be very careful when I'm driving because the worst name to have on your driver's license when you get pulled over for speeding is the name Kwik. You're not going to, I can never talk my way out of a speeding ticket. And I get to do my Dharma, which is teaching people how to learn faster.
Right.
And I really, again, everyone who's listening, I feel like everyone could relate to the idea where it's just harder and harder to catch up, keep up, much less get ahead. My inspiration was my desperation. When I was 5 years old, I was in kindergarten class and I had an unfortunate accident. Now, some people would say it turned out pretty well, so it was a fortunate accident, but I had a traumatic brain injury. I had a very bad fall into a windowsill, ricocheted into a radiator. I was knocked unconscious, rushed to the emergency room, and where it really showed up was in school. I had processing issues where teachers would have to repeat themselves over and over again, and I would learn to pretend to understand, but I didn't really understand. I had poor focus, poor memory. I would have migraines every day as a 5-year-old. I just thought it was normal.
Oh, wow.
At the same time, my grandmother was started showing early signs of dementia, and that was hard because she was my superhero. My parents immigrated to the U.S. My dad was 13 and unfortunately lost both his parents at a very early age, didn't speak the language. We live in the back of a laundromat that my mother worked at. So they had many jobs. So my grandmother took care of us. And so when she started calling me by my father's name or repeating something she just said 30 seconds ago, that was very confusing as a 5, 6, 7-year-old. And she passed of Alzheimer's. We donated all the proceeds to my book, Limitless, to Alzheimer's research for women. And, as you know, women are twice as likely to experience Alzheimer's than men. Yet a lot of the research is still done on men and treatment on male brains. So in memory of my grandmother. And also education's the other part, brain health and education. So because I had such a hard time in school, we fund schools since 2013 in villages where they don't have access to education. In Ghana, Guatemala, we built schools in Kenya. So, really, I struggled, and my mission really is no brain left behind. When I was 9, what you mentioned, it was hard. I remember one specific day at school where I was being teased really harshly when I was 9 years old because I couldn't. Like, my last name is Kwik, everyone called me slow, right?
Yeah.
And kids could be ruthless. And I was being teased, and a teacher came to my defense. She pointed to me in front of the whole class and said, "Leave that kid alone. That's the boy with the broken brain."
Oh.
And that became my moniker in school. That label became my limit, if you will.
Right.
Because I didn't know I had a broken brain. We talk a lot about the power of mindset. This idea that, all behavior is belief-driven, and my belief was, I have the broken brain. So every single time I did badly in school, every single time I wasn't picked for sports, and this was like every week, I would always say to myself, it's because I have the broken brain. Right? Adults have to be very careful of their external words because they often become a child's internal words.
I was just going to say that, as teachers and parents, what you say to your kids, especially at that age, it sticks, and it kind of determines the destiny of your life. And so, with my children, and you just recently, congratulations, had a child.
Our second. So she, very, very, very blessed. It wreaks havoc on my sleep, but
for sure.
You know that. But I'm getting good counsel at Next Health.
But what you were saying, like what you program into your kids' brains at that moment in time, and that critical moment in time when all their neurons are connecting, can have lifelong consequences.
No doubt. Yeah. So I struggled all through school. It wasn't just elementary school. It was middle school. It was junior high. It was high school. I would come from immigrant parents and a very strong work discipline. So I would work 3 times harder than the other kids, but I would do worse. And it was very frustrating. Being called broken, it really affected my self-esteem. Like, it took me 3 years longer to learn how to read as a kid. So lack of self-confidence, lack of self-worth, became painfully shy. I mean, I would do a book report because I would work really hard, go to the library before the internet and everything. I'm in my 50s, so it's like back on dating myself a little bit. But I would do the work. But if a teacher asked me to talk in front of the class about my book report, I would be so terrified. My heart would be beating out of my chest. I remember one day I looked at the teacher and I just said, I didn't do it. I lied to her because I was so phobic of the spotlight, and which is ironic, right? Because
Yeah.
my two biggest challenges were learning and public speaking.
And that's what you do now.
This is all I do is public speak and on this thing called learning.
Yeah.
But it's just a reminder, everyone that's listening and watching, that our struggles can become strengths. Like right, with challenge comes change, and that's the power of determination. That's the power of utilizing, these neuroplasticity and all the things we know about the brain to be able to adapt and change and grow.
Right. So was there a moment in time that, obviously you were suffering for a while. Was there a realization or a moment that things switched or flipped, or was it a gradual change into who you are now?
It was a couple of moments.
Okay.
And I'll share only because I feel like some people could relate to this. When I graduated high school, I was fortunate to get into a local college, and I thought freshman meant I could make a fresh start. I'm the oldest of three siblings, and I wanted to be a good role model, and I wanted to show the world and that I could do it, show myself I could do it. So I took all these classes, and I did worse, so much worse, and I just thought I should quit school because I didn't have the money to be in school. Better use to my family, because I couldn't really afford to be there. And when I was going through this dilemma, and I'm sure a lot of listeners are facing their own, adversity.
True.
A friend said, "Hey, why don't you get some perspective? I'm going home this weekend to visit my family. Why don't you come with me?" And I noticed that when you change your point of view, you change the people you're around or the place that you're in, then it gives you a kind of fresh perspective. And I agree to go, and I'm visiting the family, and the family is pretty well off, beautiful home on the water. The father walks me around his property before dinner and asks me a very innocent question. It's the most innocent question, but it's the worst question you could ask me at the time. He asks, "How's school?" And I'm very introverted. I start crying and bawling in front of this complete stranger because I had so much angst and pressure, and I tell my whole story, broken brain, I'm ready to quit school, we don't have the money to be here. And then he asks me another question. He says, "Well, Jim, why are you in school?" And I noticed that leaders, entrepreneurs, innovators, disruptors, they ask questions, right? Because questions really are the answer. It's a way of capturing this part of your brain. It's like a gatekeeper called your reticular activating system that determines your brain is primarily a deletion device trying to keep information out, but what you let in are the things you care about, and it's really driven by the questions that we have. And so nobody's ever asked me that question. I just thought, well, you go to school and you get a job and you do this, right? And I go, and I didn't have an answer. He was just like, "Well, what do you want to be? What do you want to do? What do you want to contribute to the world?" And I didn't have an answer because nobody asked me that question before. And then as a mentor, and he was like, one of my early mentors, he said, "Jim," he takes out a piece of paper out of his back pocket, like a journal, tears up, and makes me write it down. And he forces me, he was very relentless, making me write down like a bucket list, like all the things I want to be, do, have, share, like my dream list.
Oh, what a great guy.
Yeah. And this is like weird. This is like very, not something I'm used to. But when I'm done with this exercise, a couple of pages, I start folding it up to put it in my pocket, thinking the exercise is done. And he reaches out and he grabs the sheets of paper. And I'm freaking out because, like, I'm very insecure, as an 18-year-old, and this person's obviously successful, and now he's reading my goals and dreams and, things I want to do, things that I've never shared with anyone, maybe even recognized in myself. And when he's done, though, this is the magic. He says, "Jim, you are this close to everything on that list." And if you're not watching this on video, I'm just spreading my index fingers like a foot apart. And I'm like, no way, I'm not that close. Give me 10 lifetimes, I'm not going to crack this list. Smart man. He takes his index fingers and he puts them to the side of my head. So my head's in between those fingers, meaning what's in between is like a key.
Yes.
That's going to get me and help me to achieve these things. And he takes me into his home, into a room that you'd love, but I've never seen before at that age. It's wall to wall, ceiling to floor, covered in books.
I love that.
And keep in mind, I've never read a book, certainly not cover to cover, very poor reader. It's like being in a room full of snakes. What makes it worse, he starts going to shelves and pulling snakes off the shelves and handing them to me. And I'm freaking out. I'm looking at the titles, and there are these biographies of some incredible women and men in history and some very early personal growth books like Napoleon Hill, Norman Vincent Peale, The Power of Positive Thinking, Dale Carnegie, right? And he says, Jim, you have to read to succeed. I want you to read one of these books a week. And automatically my mind goes back to schoolwork. And I'm like, have you not heard anything I've said? I'm a poor reader. I have all this schoolwork. And when I said schoolwork, he said, Jim, don't let school get in the way of your education. This is a Mark Twain quote, but this was over 30 years ago, so I didn't know that. But I was like, that's very insightful. But my parents raised me, if I'm going to say something, I'm going to do it. And I really can't do this with all my midterms and everything. And very, very smart man, because I'm fighting for my limitations, right? And he takes out my list, which he still has, and he starts reading out loud all of my dreams. And I don't know if you could imagine this 18-year-old insecure kid, and you start hearing your dreams incanted by someone else, another person's voice out in the universe. And it messed with my mind and really my soul, something fierce. And a lot of the things on that list were things I wanted to do for my parents, things that they could never afford, or even if they could afford, they wouldn't do for themselves. And so in Limitless, we talk about the power and the science of motivation. And part of it is having a reason, because without reasons, you won't get a result. And with those reasons, I agree to read one book a week. Fast forward, I'm back at school at my desk, and I have a pile of books, pile A of all this work I have to study for school, and then pile B, the books I promised. And I couldn't get through pile A as it was. So what do? Where do I get the time? I don't eat, I don't sleep, I don't socialize, I don't exercise, all the things that's good for your brain, right? I just live in the library for weeks and weeks. And one night, I pass out at 2 o'clock in the morning out of sheer exhaustion. I fall down a flight of stairs in the library. I hit my head again.
Oh my God.
And I woke up in the hospital 2 full days later. And at this time, when I woke up in the hospital bed, I was hooked to all these IVs, because I just lost, I was very dehydrated, malnourished, and I was 117 pounds they weighed me at. So I was just I thought I died. It was the darkest time in my life, and maybe part of me wish I did, because I felt like I was really a waste and just not important. And I said, there has to be a better way. And to answer your question, what happened was, the nurse is like Providence. The nurse came in with a mug of tea, and on it was a picture of Albert Einstein, who is the opposite, like genius, opposite of what I thought I was. But there was this quote that we've all heard at different iterations, said, the same level of thinking that has created your problem, it won't solve your problem. And it made me ask another question, like, what's my problem? Well, I have a broken brain and I'm a slow learner. Well, how do I think differently about it? Maybe I could fix my brain. Maybe I can learn how to learn faster. And I was like, where do you learn how to do that? School, right? So I asked the nurse for a course bulletin, and I started looking at the classes for next semester, and they're all classes on what to learn and 0 classes on how to learn. So I started studying the books that my mentor gave me and started really studying the brain. I'm so fascinated and interested to solve this riddle. How does your brain work so you could work your brain? Right? Our brain is the control center. And I want to remind everyone that we are the pilot of our brains. We don't have to be the passenger. And it controls everything, our health, our habits, our careers, or everything, relationships. And I made that my mission. And within 2 months, a light switch flipped on. I started studying ancient mnemonics and brain neuroscience and speed reading, all these things. And my grades just skyrocketed. But the thing is when I was suffering all that time, I couldn't help but help other people, because I feel a moral obligation to do what I do. Like, shame on me or you or anybody if you know something that could support people suffering and you come up with a solution and you don't share it, right? So I took my mess and turned to my message, and I started to tutor. And one of my very first students, she was a college freshman. She read 30 books in 30 days. Can you imagine that?
That's
like going on Amazon or going to the bookstore, picking up 30 books on any subject that could elevate your life, and read, not skim it or scan it, but really read it. And I wanted to find out not how. I taught her exactly how. I wanted to know why. What was her purpose, my purpose? And she told me that her mother was dying of terminal cancer, was only given 2 months to live, 60 days. And the books she was reading were books to save her mom's life. at the time, 18, I didn't know what to do. So I said, you're in my thoughts, prayers. 6 months later, I get a call from this young lady, and she's crying profusely. I get goosebumps.
Yeah.
I call them truth bumps. I got a little choked up thinking about it.
Bumps, yeah.
But she's crying hysterically. But when she stops, I find out that they are tears of joy, that her mother not only survived, but is really getting better. Her doctors didn't know how or why. They called it a miracle, but her mother attributed 100% to the great advice she got from her daughter, who learned it from all these books.
Wow.
And in that moment, I realized two things. Number one, if knowledge is power, then learning is our superpower. And it's a superpower we all have.
Right.
And the second thing I realized my mission.
Right.
As the boy with the broken brain, I want to build better, brighter brains, no brain left behind, and now 34 years later, we have students online in every country in the world, 195 nations. We write books, and we have a podcast and social media, all of this. And the through line for all of it is showing people how to overcome those mental limitations, either in their mindset or their methods or motivation, to be able to create the learning and life that they desire and really deserve.
Yeah, no, that's such an incredible story. And talk about moments that change your life. You've had a few of them. It's just what incredible stories. What I've took away from that is that part of what I talk about when I speak to my patients about mental activity, I get asked all the time, hey, doc, I don't want to get Alzheimer's. I don't want to get slow in my brain. What should I do? And I tell them you have to use your brain. Yeah. They're like, well, there's a lot of ways to use your brain. You can do Sudoku puzzles. You can do crosswords. You can play chess. To me, the most powerful way that you can use your brain to create long-lasting change and not just protect you from disease, but continually improve is learning and teaching.
Yes,
right?
Very much.
Doing that full cycle of learning, applying it to yourself in your life, and then telling someone else about it.
I love that.
Right?
Yeah. and I think that's why you learn anything. You learn for two reasons. You learn anything for how it gets to help you, but you also learn it how it could help others, right?
Exactly.
And you also learn it better when you teach.
Right.
Have you noticed that?
Yeah, exactly.
It's called the explanation effect. When you learn something, even when people are listening to this podcast, if you had to give a TEDx talk about some of the highlights of what you and I are discussing, and they had to give a talk next week about it, would they pay attention differently, right? Would they take better notes? Would they ask more questions on social media and really go deep? But when you teach something, you get to learn it twice. I love learning and teaching are two sides of the same coin.
When you and I do a lot of talks in front of a lot of people, and we're asked to synthesize information and talk to people about it. Just that standing up on stage, having to tell other people something new. How are you going to say it? How are you going to get them to effectively incorporate into their life? It makes all the difference in how quickly you learn as well. And so it's a superpower just being able to teach somebody and using teaching as a method for learning, I think.
Very much so. I encourage people, because I know we're going to go through, ideas and science-based strategies to learn faster or to how to optimize your brain. But even if people summarized it and posted it, tag myself on social media, it's a way of sharing and teaching to your fans, your followers, your friends, your family, and really even makes you even more accountable too. Right. Like, I'm learning this is part of my identity. People do that and happen to tag us. I'll see it and I'll actually repost some and actually gift out a few copies of Limitless randomly, just as a thank you for listening to the show.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome of you. Yeah. Thank you for doing that. And it's one of my favorite books. I think I've read it 3 times now. Yeah. I sit down and
this is the one, Lord of the Rings, the one ring that controls them all. This is like a book, one of the books that will help you learn, read, and remember all the other books. Right. Because it just teaches you how to learn. So it's like a lead domino learning. It's the one, you did that and everything after that gets easier. It's like Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, sharpen the saw.
Exactly.
Right? If you have all this wood you need to cut and we have all this research you need to do, all this to-do list, and you have a dull blade, when's the best time to sharpen it? At the end, in the middle, or in the beginning? Of course, in the beginning. Otherwise, you're going to suffer, struggle, waste a lot of time. And that's how I feel like upgrading our learning skills and upgrading our brain too, because we upgrade I mean, think about the technology we upgrade on a regular
Sure,
basis.
right.
We upgrade our computers, our phones, our apps. But when's the last time we sat down and upgraded the most important technology, which has created all technology, which is the human brain?
Yeah. You know, one of the things you talk about at the beginning of the book is what the current state of using our brain is. And I think, you know, even from my experience of the world as a child, and then even my high school when there were no electronic devices, very few distractions, actually.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, people talk a lot about meditation right now, but I remember the bus ride to school was meditation because you just sat there looking out the window the entire time, right?
And I think boredom is so valuable.
Exactly,
Like even
right.
with children, not giving them all the stimulus and all the screens and everything else, have given them time to play, to ponder. I think there's a lot of value in being bored. But nowadays we're at the DMV and you can't just stand in line and think about things or think about gratitude or whatever it is. We always have to be kind of attached to our screens.
Well, yeah, I mean, people are like, you know, going to the bathroom and whipping out their phone
Right,
while
right,
they're,
right.
or you're in line for, there's one person in front of you, the supermarket, someone whips out their phone right behind that person. And it's a constant distraction. And so in my practice, I'm seeing a lot of people complaining about brain fog. It is, I would say it's almost ubiquitous that people complain of some level of loss of mental clarity, which they term brain fog. And I feel that a lot of this has to do with the complete lack of boredom in their life, lack of not switching to that part of your brain that is used to being bored, because that is actually the same part of the brain where you develop deeper thoughts and more impactful thoughts, right?
Very much
More thoughts about your purpose and meaning in life. A lot of people complain nowadays about not having purpose in their life. It's because they never give their brains a chance to understand what their purpose might be, right?
Yeah, it's so important to schedule, you know, even for myself, just thinking time, some white space, right? Disconnect so you can reconnect, and really, because your brain's not meant to go, you know, full speed all day. Taking these little reprieves where you could think, reflect on things. I think that's our value in society. Like, keep in mind, everyone listening to this, it's not like it was thousands of years ago where, like, an agricultural age or something, our industrial ages, where our value in society was our brute strength. Today, it's our brain strength.
Right.
Right. It's not our muscle power; it's more our mind power. And the faster you can learn, the faster you could earn.
Yeah.
Nowadays, because knowledge today is not only power; knowledge is profit.
Right.
You know, but I agree. Like, a lot of people are struggling. They're part of our community, and they're reaching out about brain fog, mental fatigue, a level of burnout. They have trouble focusing because of it on the things that really matter.
Right.
So they're always falling behind, or they're very successful and they come to us because they want to maintain that edge.
Right.
Because it's such a competitive marketplace and environment.
Yeah. Do you think we've also replaced using our brain with using our technology?
Yeah.
I remember when I was a kid, we have to remember phone numbers. Like, if you didn't remember somebody's phone number, you couldn't talk to them because there's no device that you had all your phone numbers in. Maybe a piece of paper, but that was a pain in the butt to pull out a piece of paper, all the phone numbers.
Yeah.
I don't think I've memorized a phone number in 20 years.
I open Limitless with the 4, because I think in order to change something, you need awareness, right? It's hard to change something unless you know it's there. And there's these 4 invisible forces that are driven by technology. It amplifies it. It didn't cause it, but it definitely has magnified it. So the 4 horsemen, I call it, of the mental apocalypse, and they all have health consequences in no specific order. Digital deluge, which is my term for information overload, what we talked about earlier. The amount of information is doubling at dizzying speed, AI, Moore's law, but how we learn it hasn't changed at all. Right, so that growing gap creates a lot of stress and information fatigue syndrome, because everything is a syndrome. So that's why we teach speed reading and accelerated learning to close that gap.
Right. Can I ask you just, because I want to go over all 4 of these in a little bit more detail. So with information overload, digital deluge, I feel a lot of people feel that if they disconnect, they'll miss out on some information, right? And in reality, I keep referring to the good old days, but sometimes all the information you had was maybe a shelf of 5 books, and that was your information. Now there's this constant urge to continually take in more information that's constantly changing. How do you tell people that they're not going to miss out on all this information?
Yeah. I mean, okay, so the information's always ever growing, so we're never going to be able to keep up with all of it. I think it's very important to have outcome-based learning as opposed to like checking every email or doing everything, having goals and aligning your activities and your learning around certain outcomes that you want to be able to achieve and filtering, right? Because we could do anything, but we can't do everything. Right. So it's not even about managing our time. Certainly that's important, but it's not time management as much as mind management. It's about priority management, right? The most important thing is to keep the most important things the most important things.
Yeah, so
right.
true.
And so even when it comes to information and really prioritizing, because the fastest way to read something, might be not reading it at all if that information is not relevant to you. Right. So you have digital deluge, and then the second one you have is digital distraction. Right? In a world full of rings and pings and dings and app notifications, social media alerts, every like, share, comment, cat video, you get this dopamine hit, and we're driven to distraction. I really feel like distraction and like focus is a muscle. Yet so many of us are flexing our distraction muscles, and we wonder why we can't focus with our kids or at work, right? Because we flex those muscles maybe first thing in the morning by grabbing our device or something like that. And so that's why we teach, a lot we have courses on focus and the whole chapter's on focus. And it's such a critical, focus will help you remember names. Focus will help you to be more present and will be able to see opportunity. And then the third one, besides digital deluge and digital distraction, is digital dementia, which you were referring to. It's like these devices are remembering things for us. And if your memory is like a muscle, it's use it or lose it. And you mentioned phone numbers. How you remembered all the phone numbers growing up, and so did I. How many phone numbers, I'm talking to everyone listening right now, how many phone numbers do you know right now, current numbers? And most people, they could count on one hand.
Right.
And not that I want to memorize 1,000 phone numbers, but it should be very concerning we've lost the ability to remember one, or a PIN number, or a seed phrase, or something we just read. I believe 2 of the most costly words in life, certainly in business, I forgot. Just think about the consequence of saying or thinking, I forgot to do it. I forgot to go to that meeting. Yeah. I forgot what I was going to say. I forgot that conversation, what was said to me. I forgot that person's name. Every single time we think that, then we lose time, we lose credibility, we could hurt our reputation, we could lose a sale. Right. On the other side, I think memory is a magnifier. Memory, let's take business. Memory, with entrepreneurs, we were having a conversation before we started filming, like YPO, and memory can make you money. Right. Think about the benefit and the advantage you have, a superpower, when you could easily remember client information, product information, facts, figures, give speeches without notes, right? Everything gets so much easier. And you look, because we live in the expert economy, and so you have so much value and you stand out. If you could go into a room and meet 20 strangers, leave saying goodbye to every one of them by name, who are they all going to remember? Exactly. They're going to remember you. So digital dementia is a term that says that the high reliance on technology to remember things for us, we don't have. Because these devices, it remembers your schedule, it remembers your to-dos, it remembers the phone numbers, goes on and on. Oh. And here's the thing, it's like if I put my arm in a cast for a year, would it grow stronger? A sling? No. It wouldn't even stay the same, right? You know that it's going to atrophy. That's digital dementia. Right. And then the last one, and that's why the largest chapter in the book is memory, is on memory. And the last horsemen of the mental apocalypse, you have digital distraction, digital deluge, digital dementia, is a term I coined digital deduction. And it's similar to digital dementia. It's the high reliance on technology that even think for us. Right. And I'm very pro technology. Sure. Very, very. I'm very excited about where AI is going. In fact, in the new expanded version of Limitless, I talk about the chapter, how to use AI to enhance your HI, your human intelligence. Because I don't see AI as so much artificial intelligence. It's more, for me, augmented intelligence,
Yes.
right? It's augmenting and supporting you. It's a tool, right? But here's the thing with technology. Technology is a tool for us to use, but if the technology is using us, then who becomes the tool, right? Then we become the
Exactly.
tool. So digital deduction is where technology is thinking for us through algorithms, through, think about what it took for us to get from here to there before there was like GPS in our phones.
Sure.
Right?
Absolutely.
We would have to build our visual spatial intelligence.
Right.
A study done in London with London cab drivers. They would analyze different parts of their brain, and that part of memory, the hippocampus, there's dense connections because they would have to study all the streets and the turns and the roads and the landmarks. And now we don't have to do that.
Right.
And again, it's like technology is like, for example, if your office or your apartment was on the 5th floor, an elevator is a form of technology.
Right.
It's very convenient.
Right.
And yet what it does is because it's so convenient, you don't have to take the stairs and get that physical exercise. It's like you have to go to the bank, it's 8 blocks away. And if you drive or take a lift to go there, then, it's very convenient, but you're not getting your steps in,
No,
right? And so for me, it's a way of, there's a quote in Limitless from a French philosopher, and he says, life is the letter C between the letters B and D. B is birth, D is death, life C, choice.
Wow.
Every moment we're making choices, right? And I believe these difficult times, they can distract you, or these difficult times can diminish you.
Sure.
Or these difficult times, they could develop you.
Yeah.
We decide. And there's only 4 decisions you can make in terms of changing something. You either, and this is oversimplified, but I think like simplicity, like when you make something simple, it amplifies things, right? Sometimes when you subtract, you actually multiply.
Exactly.
You take certain people out of your life or certain opportunities or whatever, and then just you magnify and multiply.
I got through medical school by taking notes, simplifying those notes into half the number of pages, and taking those notes and simplifying them into index cards. And then the last thing I did was take all the index cards from all my notes and put them on one piece of paper.
That's amazing. And the process of doing that is so powerful.
It's so powerful.
So there's 4 choices we can make. You could either stop something, you could start something, you could do less of something, or you could do more of something.
Sure.
So you could stop smoking. You could start meditating. You could do less binge watching something. You could do more movement, right? And it's really that simple. But going back to technology, I'm very optimistic. Technology allows this to happen, right? It allows us to do our online academy. It allows us to do all these things. And so I'm very fond of technology. It's just making a choice when to engage with it and being healthy about it, right? And it's different for every single person. Who am I to say like how many hours somebody should be spending or not spending on their phone? But I think having part of being limitless is actually limiting yourself, having borders or boundaries, having guardrails around the things that are important: your time, your emotions, your relationships, your wellness, your mental health, all of that.
It works for all of it, for sure. Yeah, the boundaries are extremely important. And I think recognizing with your own brain when you are crossing the boundaries that you set for yourself. I think a lot of times, these devices, people don't realize this, but these devices were engineered to keep us addicted and on them all the time. And if you think that these social media companies and every game that you're playing is not spending hundreds of millions of dollars figuring out exactly the chemical release in your brain to get you addicted, you're crazy, because it's obvious that they're doing that. And so I think people have a lot of guilt around, the amount they use their devices for doing things like playing games or social media. But I tell my patients, like, it's not your fault. Like, this was made to do this. This is why this is happening. You just have to recognize, right?
Right. I mean, these companies have the top experts in the world and spend billions of dollars to do that. And, it comes back. I really feel like us taking responsibility.
Sure.
Years ago, I got to introduce 2 of my superheroes. I talk about superheroes a lot because it's a fun metaphor, but also I couldn't read for all those years. I taught myself how to read by reading comic books.
Right.
Something about the illustrations, the art, it just brought the words to life. And I love the hero's journey. We even opened Limitless with Joseph Campbell's stages of the hero's journey. And we make them, the reader, the hero, right?
Yes.
And so two individuals wanted to meet each other. It was Richard Branson and Stan Lee. Not Stanley, but Stan Lee, right? The creator of all the
comics, the superheroes, right?
And I set up a dinner. We're in the car, and I asked Stan this burning question I have in my mind. Like I had to get the guts to be able to ask. I said, Stan, you created all the most amazing superheroes. Who's your favorite? And he looks at me and says, Jim, it's Iron Man. And he says, Jim, who's your favorite superhero? And I post this picture of us in the car. He had a Spider-Man tie. So I said, Spider-Man. And without a pause in Stan's iconic voice, he goes, with great power comes great responsibility, right? And all of us know that.
Yeah.
And it's like in our DNA. And truth be told, like, I tend to reverse things that I hear or read sometimes probably because of my head injury, right? And I heard something completely different. I was like, Stan, you're right. With great power comes great responsibility. And the opposite is also true. With great responsibility comes great power.
Sure.
When we take personal responsibility for something, we have great power to make things better, right? And so that's why sometimes, and I'm guilty of this also, when we make excuses or we blame or we whatever at events, and I'm in front of a good 250,000 people a year in total. I could be on 3 continents in 1 week, much like you just came back from another continent.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, like, at these events, people will invariably pull me aside because I'll do these demonstrations, right? I'll pass around a microphone if there's time. And I've done this at YPO and different organizations, and like 50 people will introduce themselves, and I'll memorize all their names.
I know, I've seen you do it.
And I always tell people, I don't do this to impress you. I do this to express to you what's possible, because the truth is, every single one of your listeners, they could do that and so much more.
Right.
Regardless of their, and we've been doing this for over 3 decades, so we have a lot of data. Regardless of your age, your background, your career, your education level, financial situation, gender, history, IQ, we all could do that. We just weren't taught, right? And so your brain doesn't come with an owner's manual, and that's why I wrote Limitless, to be that for people. But at these events, invariably people will pull me aside in the lobby, and they'll be very secretive about it and shy about it. They'll say, Jim, you're a memory expert. I have a horrible memory, right? I'm too old. I'm really not that smart. And I always say the same thing, and I'll say the same thing to listeners who think they can't do this. I say, stop. If you fight for your limitations, you get to keep them. If you fight for your limitations, you get to keep them, then they're yours, right? Your brain is this incredible supercomputer. Your self-talk, your beliefs are the program it will run. So if you tell yourself, I'm not good at remembering people's names, you will not remember the name of the next person you meet because you program your supercomputer not to. So it's hard to create a positive life with a negative mind. That's not to say you have one negative thought and it ruins your life any more than eating a donut will ruin your life. But if you eat that donut 30 times a day, every day, like we have our negative thoughts, there's going to be a consequence.
Exactly.
Right. And so going back to this, I'm just saying when it comes to technology, with great responsibility comes great power. It's just being responsible, remembering we have agency, that even when we complain about things on the outside, it can be completely true. Like you had these circumstances growing up, but nothing's different. And we can't be upset by the results we didn't get from the work we didn't do.
Right.
And I have to say that as a coach, I have to call people on their BS, their belief systems, when it comes to how they view themselves, because I think the key is you want to be a thermostat. You don't want to be a thermometer. I mean, if there's a thermometer on the wall, its only function, it reacts to the environment. That's all it does.
Right.
And sometimes as human beings, we are a thermometer. We react to politics, we react to how people treat us, we react to the weather. But the happiest and certainly the more the fulfilled, successful individuals, they tend to identify more with the thermostat because the thermostat doesn't react to the environment. It gauges. It still knows the temperature.
Yes.
But what's the difference? It sets a temperature and then the environment reacts to you.
Right.
And I think consciously and unconsciously, all of us are setting a temperature, a standard, a vision, a goal, whatever. And taking that invisible and making it visible is, I feel like that's a big, that we are that the future belongs to the creators, and we have the most creative 3-pound matter between our ears that could do amazing things.
Absolutely.
And I'm just so excited about and so optimistic about where people could go in terms of their personal.
Me too. And I think, I think there's a lot of fear in the creative industries right now about AI, but I think it's misguided. I think AI is going to enable even more creativity from humans.
No doubt. And technology has done that over, there's so many different examples. But I do agree, people are struggling right now with focus, with brain fog, with mental fatigue. I was thinking about this, as we're speaking. I could give people 5 quick tips.
Please do it.
To overcome. So if you're listening to this and you feel a little like mentally fatigued, maybe you're struggling with brain fog. And again, this is not meant to treat or diagnose, any kind of condition. But as a coach, I want to offer some perspective. So let's make an acronym out of this. Focus. I'll do this with you.
Okay.
Because this is the creative part. Our brain doesn't learn best through consumption. It actually learns better through creation and co-creation and creativity, right?
Let's do it.
The F, and I use acronyms in case people are driving, they're working out, they're not able to take notes.
Right.
The F, okay, so this is for energizing your brain and having better focus to get things done.
Okay.
The F, let's say the F is feed your brain, right? Your brain, what you eat matters, especially for your gray matter.
Absolutely.
And you could write books on the subject. The whole area of science, we have a chapter in Limitless on neuronutrition.
Right.
That your brain is only about 3% of your body mass, but it requires 20% of the nutrients. And some of those nutrients are a little bit different than the rest of your body, because obviously your brain's part of your body. We talk about some of my favorite brain foods. And everyone, I think everyone's bio-individual. You might have allergies. Go to Next Health, go to your functional medicine doctor, and you could do food allergy tests, microbiome test, find out what works. But generally, like some of my favorites personally, avocados, monounsaturated fat, the blueberries.
Sure.
I like to call them brain berries, and they're neuroprotective. Broccoli, there's an ingredient in there called sulforaphane, which is really good for your cognitive health. We use olive oil a lot in our household. Eggs, if your diet allows, the choline in eggs, very important. Acetylcholine is very important for brain health. Green leafy vegetables like kale and spinach. Remember your omega-3s, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Critical nutrient.
Absolutely. And you get it, and I always prefer people generally get it what they can from food.
Absolutely.
Wild salmon, sardines, right? Clean sources, though.
Sure.
Turmeric is an interesting one.
Lots of spices. Yeah, very healthy.
Very, very much so. Right. Turmeric, the active ingredient, curcumin, helps to lower inflammation.
Right.
Walnuts, I like to snack on personally. They also look like the brain too, just as a little mnemonic device, but they're high in vitamin E, neuroprotective. Dark chocolate is a lot of favorites. So the F in focus is feed your brain, right?
And I will say on that note, just to contribute to this conversation,
of course.
Is I think where people get it wrong is they think they can eat brain foods and it will be all they need to do. But what really you have to do is combine that with eliminating the foods that don't feed your brain and actually harm your brain. And those are ultra-processed foods, things that are very high in sugar, things that are very high in chemicals, for example. Once you eliminate the ultra-processed food...
Sugar, the sugars too.
Exactly,
your insulin resistance. Yeah, so it's those 4 choices. You either stop something, start something, do less of something, so you minimize it, or you do more of the good stuff.
Right.
But that makes sense. So you get your nutrition. So feed your brain can be you can feed your brain 1 of 2 ways, either through food or supplements, right?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
that could work. If you're not getting the turmeric, you might supplement with curcumin. If you're not getting the broccoli, you might supplement with sulforaphane. If you're not getting the red meat, there are amino acids, there's creatine, like all these things that could help do that. And that's for cognitive wellness. But there's also this whole area that you're very familiar with, which are nootropics.
Right.
And that's for cognitive performance.
Exactly.
So cognitive wellness, having good brain health is important, which you can get through food and supplementing with omega-3s, vitamin D, all the critical things. And then nootropics are substances that are science-based that have been shown to enhance focus, memory, mood, mental energy.
Like caffeine's a nootropic.
Right. Yeah.
Nicotine's a nootropic, believe it or not. And I'm not telling people go smoke, but nicotine is known to be a nootropic. And there's other ways like pouches now that you can use in small quantities sometimes if you need an additional boost.
Yeah, it's been shown to be able to be supportive of brain aging.
Yeah.
You know,
do you use those?
Occasionally. I don't vape or smoke,
Yeah, I don't
but
vape
they
or smoke.
have they have like things sublingual.
Athletic nicotine is one of them that I use.
Or they have little mints.
Yeah, and the
that is more
mints too,
pure.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and look, I mean, if you have problems with nicotine addiction, you shouldn't try these. But I love reading about nootropics and how they affect the brain. I was going to save the nootropics for the S in focus
Oh yeah.
for supplements,
That
but
could be.
since we've already talked about it, maybe you have a different thing for us.
Some of my favorite ones.
Yeah, let's talk some more.
I mean, we put about 30 of them, and we link in Limitless, like we cite all the human studies. People could actually get, if it's okay, we put a report together with all the studies and the ingredients.
Of all the nootropics.
brainnutrition.com.
Oh,
People go there, they can get it free if they don't want to get the book.
Great.
They could do that. But some of my favorites, I mean, there are a lot. I wouldn't recommend doing the whole gambit, right? You have various ones, Bacopa,
Yeah.
right, which you're familiar with. One I'm excited about that we use, and in transparency, we have our own nutrition product called Kwik Mind, KWIK Mind, kwikmind.com. There's a coffee fruit extract that doesn't have any caffeine. It's kind of the byproduct, usually discarded in the coffee making process. It's been shown to support BDNF, brain-derived neurotropic factors, also as well. But lion's mane, there's so many.
Mushrooms are also.
So many. Phosphatidylserine. There's so many good things that are out there.
Yeah.
So, and then that can be used for performance.
Right.
So you use the vitamin D or your B vitamins, your omega-3s, for good brain health.
Right.
But in terms of performance, there are other things that you could do.
Paracetam is also something that's been used for a long time for performance as well. But I think, to your point, feeding your brain healthy food, keeping the ultra-processed food away is going to promote brain health. And, I see a lot of people using nootropics like on a daily basis sometimes. And I tell them, use them when you need them. You don't necessarily need them all the time, though, right?
Yeah.
I mean, your brain needs time to downshift sometimes, too. And there are supplements to help you downshift, too, I think.
Yeah, another one, ashwagandha.
Ashwagandha is a great one.
Is amazing. It helps mitigate the effects of stress. It could potentially help you be able to sleep better. I mean, there's so many things, lion's mane, there's so many things that are out there that could be supportive. And that's why knowledge really can be power if it's applied.
Exactly.
Right? I think there's this divide, not only those who have and those who have not. There's a divide between those who know certain things and those who don't know.
Absolutely.
And those who know can make better choices and decisions, in business and relationships and in their health and so on.
Exactly. That's why, podcasts like yours and this one, absolutely. I mean, this has added so much to my knowing. Yeah. And even if it's not on health, maybe there's other things. I mean, I'm addicted to learning now. Yeah. and I just feel that just the knowing is so powerful.
Same. And it's also, the learning is good for that neuroplasticity.
Absolutely.
And so the F, feed your brain.
Feed your brain.
Let's
say the O, oxygenate. Let's make it really simple. Your brain, again, is only 3% of your body mass, but it requires 20% of nutrients, 20% of the oxygen. And so where do you get oxygen? You could do deep breathing. I mean, a lot of people get tired. Have you ever noticed, sometimes when you're reading, you fall asleep?
Yeah.
I mean, part of it is because people are reading too slow, and their brain gets bored, and that's why we teach people how to read faster and actually understand more than if they're reading slower. But also, it's their posture. I've noticed so many people, they're slumped, and the lower 1/3 of our lungs absorbs 2/3 of the oxygen. So a lot of people are tired. So I would recommend the O for focus could be oxygenation. Yeah, and taking a little brain break even. You work for an hour, take a 5-minute brain break, and you can move. You could do some deep breathing, some Wim Hof, box breathing.
Right.
4-7-8, whatever people's style. Alpha breathing. There's so many different ways, but oxygenate, clear the mental cobwebs. But also, you can get oxygen through exercise, right? Your heart's beating. It sends more blood flow to your brain and more oxygen to your brain. Get your zone 2 in, and you can do your high intensity work. But oxygen, You talk about, VO2 max, all that. And then in hyperbaric chamber,
Yeah.
I got the opportunity to do that at
Did you do that
Xtel.
today? Great.
Yeah,
All
and
right.
it's just pressurized oxygen. That was a big part of my recovery from my traumatic brain injury.
Right.
I did multiple sessions for that, and most cities have places where they could go and do sessions.
Do some hyperbaric sessions
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah. And I think on the oxygenation part too, there are some kind of like biohacks now with oxygenation. There's exercising with oxygen called EWAT that people are using very successfully. To your point also about posture, breathing is done through multiple muscles, your diaphragm being one of them, so that your posture affects that, but also your upper body has, our intercostal muscles, etc. So really having good posture and good mobility is very important to your breathing. And we don't practice breathing. Everyone thinks, I'm breathing all day. I don't need to practice breathing. But breathing is a practice that people need to perfect as well. And we tend to forget over our lifetime how to breathe. Like you don't see kids, you don't see little babies and kids slouching a lot until they get to school. And that's when the slouching starts happening. And so I think that's an important part of understanding how to use your daily breathing capacity to its maximal use as well. I will say on the breathing as well, if you have any obstructions to breathing and also specifically nasal breathing, that's a big consideration. And so if you can't breathe out of your nostrils, everyone can do this at home. Put a finger on one nostril, try to breathe in. Put your finger on another nostril, try to breathe in. If one of them is obstructed, you should see a doctor, an ENT doctor, to maybe have that corrected. Maybe you have a deviated septum or clogged nasal passages, turbinates that are inflamed. My surgical background coming out here, all that can be fixed with medications and with surgery. Nasal breathing is a key to adequate oxygenation of your brain.
Yeah, there's this whole thing is it cleans the air. It's nitric oxide. You have all these benefits from doing that. Mouth taping is works for some people really well, and some people struggle like me with sleep apnea, which is a breathing disorder. I have very severe sleep apnea where I stop breathing 250 times a night. So it's even with so you have to use some kind of support dental device or a CPAP or something to do that, and that takes me to the C in focus, which I would make consistent sleep. We're
not going to use S for sleep.
I have that. I have something for S.
Okay.
I'm doing this on the fly, so it's very
consistent sleep. Okay.
Meaning that, let's talk about the brain. When you don't get a good night's sleep, how is your brain performing the next day? How's your ability to think, to solve problems? How's your ability to focus? How's your ability to study, remember? How's your mental energy? It's all, lack of sleep impairs every biological, physiological function, right? And I know you have a slew of sleep tips. Some of my favorites that I have to go to, so when you sleep, you consolidate short to long-term memory.
Absolutely. Yep.
So if you have long-term memory issues, you might want to get a sleep study, which now you could do at home. And you don't have to go to a clinic overnight in a sterile environment. You could actually do it yourself. Also, when you sleep, that sewage system kicks in your brain.
Glial cells.
Yeah, and you can clear out those substances and proteins that could lead to brain aging challenges. And it's also where you dream. People don't realize this, but your brain doesn't shut off at night. If anything, sometimes it's more active in certain ways. And what is it doing? Not only integrating, consolidating, but it's also solving things. Like you start dreaming about, did you know, Paul McCartney came up with the song Yesterday in his dreams?
In his dreams, right?
Yeah.
Not too far from here, close to Central Park.
Mary Shelley created Frankenstein in her dream. A chemist created the framework of the periodic table in his dream. So, think about what everyone who's listening, what you're dreaming about that could solve problems, create for your business, your family, whatever you're focusing on throughout that day. But we're forgetting it, right? So if you want a good video, they can search my name, Jim Kwik, How to Remember Dreams. Because a lot of people wake up and they know they had a good dream, but they can't remember what it is. So sleep, and some of my favorite sleep hacks, and I'd love to know yours. I have to get direct sunlight first thing in the morning.
Absolutely.
Right, your eyes are connected to your brain. It's the only part of your brain that's outside of your skull. So it resets your circadian rhythm. I always sleep better at night when I get some, not through a window, because that could filter out certain spectrums of light. Even if it's foggy or hazy, getting out, even 10 minutes, very simple.
Yeah.
Caffeine, I'm very sensitive to, so I can't do caffeine past noon. Also, you have an alarm clock to wake up. Highly recommend you have an alarm clock to go to sleep.
Sure.
Because your brain, even on weekends, and nobody does it perfectly, I certainly don't, but to the degree you could go to bed on a certain time and wake up at the same, a certain time and keep that consistent. Your nervous system loves a rhythm, and you'll get better long-term sleep overall. And then two of the big things that everyone knows about, and just as a reminder, we would know thousands of years ago it would be time to sleep because the environment would tell us.
Yeah.
There would be a decrease in two environmental factors, light and temperature. So, you want it cooler and you want it darker. That just makes, now we're so cold where you're shivering, and that's going to keep you up. For me, I like every once in a while take a bath, put some Epsom salt or magnesium. You absorb it transdermally. It helps you to be able to relax. Right. You go in a sauna or steam or a hot shower. Right. When you get out, your core body temperature drops. A nice signal to produce melatonin, which is the hormone to help you relax. And then at night, keep it as dark as possible. And the culprit there again is our screens, right? We've all heard about the light that comes off our screens, pulls our mind and think it's still daylight, so we don't produce that melatonin. So those are kind of my go-to for sleep. So that's the C, consistent sleep.
Can I add a couple?
Yes.
Let's add a couple tips here. And I want to get your feedback on some of this too.
I want to know.
With sleep apnea, I feel that so many people have sleep apnea, but they either don't diagnose it or don't want to admit that they have sleep apnea. And I think step one is you have to understand whether or not you have sleep apnea. And step two is you got to get it treated as soon as possible.
Yeah.
People don't want to get on CPAP, but at the end of the day, there's a couple of realizations there is that, number one, there are other treatments besides CPAP, a lot of other treatments that you can try first. Secondly is if you need CPAP, you should do it until we figure out another way to fix your sleep apnea. And I think it's critical because sleep apnea, we know, has a high likelihood of leading to neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's, but also heart attacks, and even cancer has been associated with sleep apnea. So it's a critical diagnosis that people can make on themselves at home. You said you can do a home sleep study. But step one, if you're even thinking you might have sleep apnea, maybe you're waking up groggy every morning or an hour after you wake up, you're tired, your significant other is saying you snore a lot or you're gasping for air at night. I really like this app called Snore Lab. Have you ever used this?
I've heard of it.
Yeah, it's fantastic. You just put it on your table at night before you go to bed. So one time you should have your phone next to you at bed. Otherwise, keep it on in another room. And it records you all night and it gives you a snore score. If you have a high snore score, it's time to get evaluated for sleep apnea, or you could take a test online, simple 8-question test called the Stop Bang test, and it gives you a likelihood of sleep apnea. So on sleep apnea, get it diagnosed and get it fixed if at all possible. On the sleep thing, other tips I would say that I find really, really useful is the phone. Not only is it the light, but it's also the amount of stress it causes on you, right?
All the content.
The
doom scrolling, and
your email stresses you out. Another thing to worry about, what's your calendar for tomorrow? So I charge my phone by my coffee machine. I keep it outside the bedroom. That creates some space and distance between me and my phone at night.
Yeah.
And in the morning when I wake up too, because the last place I go is to the coffee machine to get some coffee after I've done all my morning routine stuff. So that's a couple of tips I can add to your already awesome list.
I love that. Yeah, for habit design, you do a whole chapter in the book. But one of the strategies is you want to control your environment, and you want to make what's good for you easier, and you want to make the things that are not so good for you more difficult. So having that phone by the coffee machine, it keeps just like if you're at a restaurant and they bring bread out, and let's say you're not supposed to do gluten, you don't feel really great about it. It's easier to say no, thank you, right up front than having that bread sit there the entire meal, and you have to say no in your mind and use your willpower 50 times, right? And use that, cognitive load is being spent on something like that. So definitely control your environment.
Yeah. Also on habit design. I love the topic of habit design, by the way. You mentioned bread. I educate my patients to say, instead of bringing the bread, can you bring sliced cucumbers? And almost every restaurant has cucumbers. And they're like, okay, do you want the dip and the cucumbers? Yes. Yeah. And you can still, feed that need to be doing something with your, food when you first sit down, but it's something that's good for you.
And that's a good thing with habits, right? You can't just stop something. You have to start doing something else.
Exactly.
So that's a wonderful way of utilizing the science of habit design.
Right, because people have a hard time sitting there at a restaurant table and not eating something. And so this kind of is a replacement is a big part of successful habit design too.
I love that.
Yeah. Okay, so let's move on to you.
Yeah, the U, and again, this is the acronym FOCUS, and it's when people are struggling with mental fatigue and distractions, I would say the U is unplug, and we've already covered this. Unplugging, especially with our devices.
Yeah.
Right. Sometimes you have to disconnect to be able to reconnect and take little reprieves and little brain breaks for us to be able to recover mentally. A lot of us are just overstressed because we have too many tabs open and we're super stimulated, and that's really leading us to a level of mental fatigue and burnout that's just off the charts. And so unplug. And then finally, the S in focus. There's so many different things and so many other things we could add to this. But I just want to introduce like small, simple steps, right? Simple steps. I think you simplify to amplify in our life.
Yeah.
And a lot of life and progress is deleting, right? You subtract so then you can multiply. You take certain things out and you grow because of it. And, and I feel it's an elegant way. And so small, simple steps when we're talking about focus is like, what is the tiniest? So if you get stalled, let's say you're just confused, or maybe that goal is too big. I ask myself this question, and I challenge people to do this. This is a question I ask myself like 10 times a day. I say, I feel like I'm not procrastinating, but I'm stalled, like I'm not moving forward. I say, what is the tiniest action I could take right now that will give me progress towards this goal where I can't fail? What's the tiniest action I can take now, operative word now, that'll give me progress towards my goal where I can't fail? So maybe somebody listening here saying, yeah, I would like to exercise more, but I can't really go into the gym. That's too big of a behavior change. Put on your running shoes. Small, simple stuff. Like if we're connected on social media and they see me with Oprah or Elon or whoever, people always want to know how we bonded. We bonded over books, right? You read to succeed. So that, that's something that I feel like, most high-level individuals, they're just always Warren Buffett. And I asked this, him, I was at a Berkshire Hathaway and he was in the mall by happenstance and playing bridge, and I got to play. But he verified 500 pages a day,
right.
And this was a handful of years ago, but you read to succeed. And plus I think reading is such great exercise for your brain.
Absolutely.
Reading is to your mind what exercise is to your body. But maybe you're not reading every day or 15 or 30 minutes a day. Small, simple step. Opening up a book, reading one line, because nobody's going to stop. You can't. On our podcast, we had a biological dentist talking about oral hygiene and brain health, and beyond just brushing, right? We're talking about oil pulling and tongue scraping, all this stuff, and we're talking about flossing. And I was like, we're talking about how to get your kids to floss. If they don't do it, small, simple step, get them to floss one tooth. Yeah. Nobody's going to stop at one, right? So little by little, a little becomes a lot. Because I really do. So the S is simplify, and small, simple steps. Inch by inch, it's a cinch. Yard by yard, it's just too hard. What is the tiniest action you could take? Yeah. Even when people are listening right now, like, wow, that was a lot of information in this episode. What is one simple action I could take right now?
Pick one thing.
Right, because this. Knowledge by itself is not power. It has the potential to be a lot of power. Sure. It becomes power when we apply it.
Exactly.
And an individual's ability to learn rapidly and translate that learning into action is the ultimate competitive advantage when you put it into action.
That's fantastic. When I think about simplification, I think about simplifying my environment as well. One of the things I did a few years ago, which I still do, is I simplify one aspect of my life every week. So I just pick one thing. Maybe it's a bookshelf that has been cluttered forever.
Oh, wow.
Maybe it's my, the cabinet in your bathroom that just has a bunch of stuff that's accumulated for weeks and weeks, for years and years. You spend maybe 1 hour. You throw out all the stuff that you are never going to use again. You consolidate and you really simplify. And once you simplify something, it becomes simple for a long, long time afterwards. Marie Kondo has written a lot about this. Look at your closet. You get decision fatigue every time you look at your closet every morning. It's time to get rid of a lot of it. Donate it. And a lot of billionaires, they only have one color of shirt, and that makes it super easy for them to get dressed in the morning. That's one less decision you have to make.
Because, decision fatigue says that you can only make a certain amount of good decisions, and then once you hit your max, that's it. Right. It's like you're at you had a making a lot of decisions. You're at a restaurant for dinner, and you can't even decide what you're going to eat.
Exactly.
Because you're struggling with that decision fatigue.
Right.
But yeah, automating things like your clothing and everything. Your external world is a reflection of your internal world.
Yes.
And so Marie Kondo your mind by cleaning your... I mean, everyone knows this too. When you make your bed or even on your computer, if you put everything in the right folder, you have clarity of thought too.
Exactly. No, focus. I love it that we came up with that. And I have a feeling that you've thought about this before, maybe a little bit, but that was awesome. Thank you for taking us through that. One thing I want to touch on is you mentioned when you were a kid, you loved comic books. And I met Stan Lee a couple times too. Incredible human being. For those of you who don't know this, look at this. And if you look at any of his movies about his superheroes, he makes a guest appearance in almost all of them.
Yeah, he's the king of cameos for sure.
King of cameos. Anyway, you had a great respect for superheroes as a child. And then now, fast forward, you've been meeting with many real life superheroes and superheroes that are in movies and teaching them how to improve their memory and their brains. And so you've kind of manifested this reality of being with the superheroes all the time, right? It's amazing.
And it's the power of the mind, right? Like and it's interesting. Yeah, I help actors in Hollywood speed read scripts, to memorize their lines, to be focused on camera. Yeah.
Will Smith and also basically all of the Avengers, right? Everybody.
A lot of heroes. I got to work with everyone from Jim Carrey to the cast of the... It's interesting, over 10 years ago, I get a call from... I did a talk, and this is the importance of remembering people's names. And the chairman of 20th Century Fox called me up and reached out to me saying, can you speak for our executive team? And I was like, happy to do so. And I go in on a Friday morning, and it's like, and it was my best training, because going through the halls, like you see like Avatar and Star Wars and all these classic movies that put you in a childlike state, and children are just so enthusiastic and they learn so fast. Right. I give a really good training, humbly, and afterwards he says, Jim, thank you so much. This has been amazing. And he gives me a personal tour of the film lot, and I've never been on like in that environment before. And when he was doing so, there was this movie poster of Wolverine, Hugh Jackman. Wow, yeah. And the movie wasn't coming out for a few months, and I said, I can't wait for the movie to come out. He picks up his phone, and 5 minutes later, I'm in his theater with 3D glasses watching Hugh Jackman fight all these super ninjas, right? Wow. And that was a perfect Friday afternoon. Right. Afterwards, he gets me and do some little market research. How was it, compared to the first one? I was like, this is great. Thank you so much. I was like, you don't know this, but I couldn't read it. After my injury when I was a kid, I taught myself how to read comic books, and my favorite comic book actually was Wolverine and the X-Men, which he's the part of the team of. And I remember when I was 9 years old one night, because I would be under the covers when my parents thought I was sleeping with a flashlight, I read that the headquarters, the school for X-Men, where they trained them to unleash their powers, was in Westchester, New York, a suburb of New York City, where I lived. And I tell him, truth, that I used to ride my bicycle when I was 9 years old every weekend trying to find that school, because that was like, some people, like his Santa Claus, whatever it is, that was real to me. Yeah. And I would every weekend look for this school, and I'm telling this to him. He's like, Jim, I didn't know you like superheroes and the X-Men. We have 30 days of filming X-Men Days of Future Past in Montreal. Do you want to go on set? Wow. And I'm like, yeah, I would love to do that. I was like, what can I do for you? He's like, teach them what you taught us, the focus, memory, speed reading scripts. I absolutely could do that. The next morning, Saturday morning, I get on a plane, and I'm like late because of LA traffic, and the entire cast of X-Men was on the plane. The entire cast. Wow. And I don't even see Hugh Jackman and Patrick Stewart. I see Wolverine and Professor X, and I'm sitting between Halle Berry and Jennifer Lawrence flying to Montreal, and I get to brain training the cast and crew. But when we land, the very first shot that they filmed, guess where it took place? Westchester, New York. Yeah, in the X-Men school. The X-Men school, right. And so I was like that 9-year-old boy seeing my heroes come to life. Now, I spent a week there with them, but when I go home, there's a package waiting for me, like a TV, size of TV. I rip it open, and inside was this photograph of me and the entire cast of X-Men. And even better than that was a note from the chairman. It said, "Jim, thank you so much for sharing your superpowers with us. I know since you were a child, you've been looking for your superhero school. Here's your class photo." And
that gives me chills right now too.
I get chills even thinking about it. But it's interesting because my mission as a child, right, with the learning disabilities and everything else, I wanted to find that superhero school because I wanted to find my powers. I wanted to find people. I want to find my friends, right? People that, because X-Men, the reason they were my favorite is not because they're the strongest. There are other superheroes that are strongest, but they were just different.
Yeah.
They didn't fit in. They were marginalized, right? And I felt like that was me. So I wanted to find this school to find my superpowers and my super friends. And I eventually found it, but I didn't find it in this world, so then I created it.
Yeah.
And I feel like all of us, I think passion and purpose often get mixed up in languaging. We use them interchangeably. But for me, passion is something that very simply, passion is something that lights you up. And that can be many different things, right? Many different things and hobbies and could light you up. Like learning is a passion. Sure. It hasn't always been my passion when I was not good at it, but it is my passion. So it lights me up. My purpose, I think our purpose is sharing our passion to light somebody else up. So learning is my passion. Teaching people how to learn is my purpose. And I'm blessed every single day to just do this work. I can think of a lot of other ways to make money or career, but I really do believe that the world can change when we change this.
Right. That's beautiful. Jim, I'm so happy to be a small part of being able to support you in everything that you're doing because you're making a huge difference. And, through your charitable organizations and also just through helping as many people as you can learn, I think it's giving your superpower to others. And I think it's just such a noble mission and you're doing such an incredible job. And I've learned so much from you personally and my kids.
I want to thank you so much also for your friendship and also I'm a client of yours. I've been going to Next Health also separately from that since close to when you opened, and I appreciate it. I feel like, especially when it comes to health, right? There's that saying that says, that a healthy person has 1,000 dreams, but a sick person has one.
Right.
Just to get healthy again.
Exactly.
And I feel like health definitely is wealth. And all the different areas of our health and our lives, our mind, our body, our spirit, our relationships, everything. So I want to thank you for allowing me to share. And I want to thank everyone also who listened to this. It's like a little master class.
It was. I loved how this turned out. Like we went through so many things. Yeah. I think people have to listen to it 2 or 3 times and send it to all their friends.
Yeah. Please do that.
Please do that. Exactly.
Absolutely.
Exactly. Yeah. To your point, I think there needs to be more realization that your brain and your body are intimately connected and is bidirectional. However you treat your brain affects your body, and whatever is going on in your body affects your brain. And you're such an expert at the brain. And I think the combination of both of us working together, bringing the body health to this, to your advice on brain health, it's extremely powerful because it can lead to so many great things just in your longevity, your health, your ability to function in this world at your optimal level. So this is I really wanted to have this conversation with you because I think a lot of my podcast guests, we talk a lot about metabolic health and body health, but really the brain aspect of this is 50% of all of it.
Yeah, and I love this because, and some people listening, my advice would be, sometimes things are hard, right? Like growth can be hard. Change can be scary, but nothing is as hard and scary as being stuck somewhere you don't belong.
Yeah.
Right. And I truly believe if people are still listening to this right now, in my heart of hearts, doing this for as long as I've been doing this, that there is a version of yourself that's patiently waiting. And the goal is we show up every single day until we're introduced.
Yeah.
So, we're all on this journey, this quest to reveal and realize more of our potential. And people see the title of my book, Limitless, and they say, how do you become limitless in a limited world? And my answer is we do it together, right? It's kind of cheesy that TEAM, that acronym team, together everyone achieves miracles or more. But just like it's not just your neurological networks and your biological networks, it's our social networks.
Sure.
Right? We all know that who we spend time with is who we become.
Exactly.
And part of it is we have these mirror neurons. We're constantly imitating the people around us, their words, their actions, their thoughts, their character, their habits. And first you create your habits, and your habits create you. You create your habits of, getting IVs and doing cryo and cold therapy and optimizing your, sleep routines and reading and exercising, meditating, and those habits create you back. But I'm extremely optimistic where we are right now. We're at the precipice of and this butterfly effect, right?
Yeah.
The butterfly flapping its wings in New York could create a tsunami across the globe. Well, I believe that at any time that there's a world that exists. I'm talking to who's listening to this right now. There's a world that exists solely because you're in it, and I'm just. And part of self-care is not just meditating and eating the best brain foods. Part of self-care is looking at the mirror and seeing that reflection, looking back, and falling in love again with that person that you see, right?
Absolutely.
That the person who's been through so much, but is still standing, right? And I'm telling you, if you've gone through adversity and difficulty, that there is, people hear about post-traumatic stress. There is post-traumatic growth. A lot of individuals have gone through things that they would never wish upon anybody, but they wouldn't change it for themselves because through it they found meaning. Through it they found a mission. They found a trait, a strength, something that allowed them to move forward, and not only bounce back, but bounce forward. And I feel like that they inspire people with their grit and their grace.
Yeah, no, it's so true. And, I grew up in a similar environment as you. A lot of bullying, a lot of, name calling, a lot of self-confidence hits. And I think you can come out of that stronger and do great things just like you did. So,
and I think everybody who's listening to this, I don't know one strong person that had an easy life.
Exactly.
And we always, every day, we get to choose. We get to choose that. And that's why every day we have a chance, because every day we have a choice.
Yep. Between B and D is C, right?
Yeah. Choice.
This is fantastic. Well, Jim, I can't wait to do this again with you. I know we have so much more that we could talk about. How can people find you and learn more? I mean, I would say Limitless is one of my foundational books that I think everyone should read. There's like 4 or 5 books, and when patients ask me, what should I read? Because I'm a big believer in self-education and reading. I always have this book as one of the top books that people should begin with, because it'll teach you how to learn. And when you know, like you said at the very beginning of this episode, when you learn to learn, everything else has become so much easier, right?
This is true.
But what other things are you putting out there?
Yeah, we have a podcast, over 400 episodes, 20 minutes each. I love in your podcast app, just search my name, and we're easy to find. We put the extended version on YouTube, so you could join our 1.8 million subscribers there, where we put also my talks and other things that would be of use.
Right.
Limitless, you can find anywhere. It's in 40 some odd languages, and we have just like there's personalized medicine based on an assessment, like maybe a DNA test, personalized nutrition based on a microbiome test or food sensitive, some kind of nutrient test. We created a personalized learning performance assessment. It only takes 4 minutes. And I realized that there are 4 main brain types. And here's the thing, it's not how smart you are, it's how are you smart. And we all have genius that expresses itself in different ways. These 4 brain types, I use the animals. It's a brain code, CODE. C is a cheetah, O is an owl, D is a dolphin, E is an elephant. When you go, you take the assessment, and once you know your brain type, we gift you strategies and resource to be able to read faster, improve your memory, be able to focus, even be able to hire, sell, everything based on brain types. And it's our gift to everybody. People could do that at mybrainanimal.com.
Okay.
And I would love people to post their result. We give them this AI, the animals, and they could post it. They could tag you. They could tag me when they post it. because I'm curious what most of your listeners, what dominant brain animal they are.
Right.
And then they can get all this training, and it's our gift to you.
Oh, thank you so much for that. And do you have an online course as well? Because I know people that want to go deeper.
Yes, we have online speed reading program that is in 21 days, triple your reading speed with better comprehension and focus. We have a 30-day memory program, learning languages. It gives speech without notes, facts, figures, data, all this stuff. Remember names and faces, all the important things that will help your life. There's a special. It's jimkwik.com/bundle, and they can get the two of them for the lowest investment that we have.
Great.
So jimkwik.com/bundle. But I want to thank you again.
Thank you.
For everything, for taking care of my health, our family's health, and the amazing work that you do.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to have you.
Thank you.